Professor Chris Nwaokobia, you're welcome to Njenje Media TV.
The pleasure is mine.
I want to start by asking you about what you think about the current government led by the APC and Chief Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Do you think that they are getting it right in terms of the economy and the much touted anti-corruption and many other things happening within the government? Are Nigerians really getting what they bargained for?
With half bag of rice, 25 kg of rice, selling for 32,000. With the naira on a consistent free fall, when this government took over, it was just hovering between 750 and 880, and the dollars exchanging at $1,350 as you and I speak, with the inflationary trend above 2 digits, closing up to about 30%, with hunger, disease, despondency, and deprivation everywhere, with the government accusing co-participants in government, with key operators of government blaming the past government, a la the National Security Advisor's outburst regarding their meeting an empty treasury, obviously forgetting that the immediate past government was an APC government, with pain, pangs, and trouble everywhere, with insecurity very unfortunately democratized across the country. You know, it used to be basically northeast and a part of the northwest and some part of the southeast. Now the Federal Capital Territory is under the control of non-state actors, with the government having obviously abdicated its responsibility to guessworks and conjectures. I think that the APC government knows that it hasn't gotten its acts together. I also know that the Nigerian people are concerned. And then indeed the media have not spared this government its whip, pardon my choice of words, because when you say you're bringing renewed hope and the people see no glimmer of hope, and the people are troubled, and the people are concerned, and safety of lives and properties, which is the primary reason for which government exists, is distant, then you have a problem. I think by and large, it's very clear that the government of Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu hasn't taken off. I think that there's a whole lot to be done. And then, like you asked, the economic policy of government. Do they have an economic policy? That's another question for perhaps conjectures. But if you want to interrogate the posturing of government, you'd use the word is a jerk, push and jerk economic policy. Today they'll tell you the government through the Minister for the Economy and the CBN coming out with a new policy, and then the next day, like the French people would say, the more things change, the more apparently they remain the same. The Naira is on a consistent free fall. Even against the French francs, the CFA, against the cedi, Naira has become one of the weakest currency in Africa. That's how tragic it has become. And so I think that the challenge goes to this government, the challenge goes to Mr. President, the challenge goes to those who are standing on a largely questionable mandate. The challenge goes to everyone who believes that this country can work. we must all aggregate at that point where, at that parlor, where the parlor's deceit and perfidy that superintends public debate is punctured. And what do I mean? Supporters of Mr. President and those who do not support Mr. President must understand that whether we like it or not, in the very end, the questions are profound. Is government functioning? In the very end, the questions are profound. How well are we doing? In the very end, the questions are profound. Where are we headed? In the very end, the questions are profound. That hunger and poverty does not know political parties. The truth, Njenje, is that hunger is indiscriminate of partisanship. The truth is that poverty and despondency is indiscriminate of religion. Remember a few days ago, the leaders of the Council of Islamic Affairs lampooned and berated the Muslim ticket. That's how serious it is. When hunger bites, it forgets whether you're APC, PDP, Labour Party, or the likes. When poverty stares you in the face, it forgets whether you're Christian or Muslim. When there is insecurity, it forgets whether you're from the South or from the North, whether you're Christian or Muslim. The truth is that we're at that point where in our historicity, even those who are standing on the mandate and those who oppose the mandate aggregate at no other debate but the fact that Nigeria must work and the fact that this administration isn't doing enough to make Nigeria work.
I mean, that is on the economy. If we come to the anti-corruption, for instance, many argue that this government has shown some element of seriousness as opposed to the government that they inherited. Look at, for instance, we had the case of Betta Edu, who was fingered in some corrupt, allegations, and she was immediately, obviously, asked to take a leave, not sacked, but suspended pending the investigation. Now you have the case of Bajabiamila, which is in total contrast to that, because there is a case of 30 billion naira that regarding the palliative that he's been accused of, and that because it's directly under the president, nothing has happened. So, do you think that the government today is engaging on a selective corruption fight, or are they fighting corruption at all?
No, when you talk about corruption, largely you're talking about a variegated case. Is this government corrupt? Is this government corruptive? Is this government corruptible? That's another debate. Is the case of Betta Edu and perhaps the woman in charge of the
humanitarian affairs,
humanitarian social security funds, and is her case selective? Is it one case of suspending, enacting weak hands, so to say, weak links, so to say, to excuse themselves? What is actually happening? And I say this without fear of querulous critics, that yes, the former government may not have taken very proactive steps against corruption, ditto not suspending those accused of being corrupt. The present administration may have taken steps a la the suspension of Betta Edu, and then the lady who was directly in charge of the Social Security Fund or something. But let me say without equivocation that the fight against corruption must be such that it's not only discreet, it has to be professional. Not only professional, it has to be in tandem with the law. Since 1999, and precisely 2001, when the EFCC came into our body politic, What we have seen basically is media trial. I'll give you a practical instance. And I hope Mr. President is not giving imprimatur to that order where trial or fight against corruption is basically a media feast, is basically trial on media. I'll give you a practical instance. At some point, the penultimate head of, former head of the EFCC by, Magu, told us that the EFCC had recovered about 2.8 trillion naira. And then when the young man who came after him came into office, he said that not more than 50 billion naira had been paid to federation account. So you ask yourself, what about the difference of about 2.75 billion? What happened? Media trials. You hear them talk about certain hundreds of millions of dollars recovered, and their successors will come and tell you no such money. So they have come to find out, and that's the tragedy of this whole mess. They have come to find out that Nigerians are largely celebrative of news about one fund being recovered or one man going down because he hasn't superintended his office effectively. But I tell you that if the present government wants to fight corruption, they must fight it professionally. They must use the media effectively, not sensationally. They must also use the technology, basically. And I tell you what I mean. You can have the regime of the BVN and still have the kind of inflows, seemingly untraceable inflows in accounts. And you ask yourself, so what happened to the BVN regime? And then you ask yourself, what happened to the single treasury account? And then you ask yourself, why are we largely denuding and deceiving ourselves? Because that's exactly what we have. So I pray and hope that this government will understand, and I'm going to take a phraseology from the immediate past government, that if we do not kill corruption, corruption will kill Nigeria. And largely, the immediate past government has gone into history as one of the most corrupt in our nation's historicity. Unfortunately, rather than stand up, understanding the urgency of now, this present government is allowing trial in the media to underscore its effort against corruption. We have a special investigator, Jim Obaze, and he has been appointed by government to do certain things, which includes investigating the CBN and allied agencies and reporting directly to the president about findings or recoveries. Very unfortunately, what we see is a dance in the media. Very unfortunately, what we see is this administration going the way of the others, doing more of media trial, doing more of dance macabre than reality. And I think that the time has come for Mr. President to say, this is not my instruction. This is not what I asked for. The time has come for Mr. President to ensure that the fight against corruption is frontal, far-reaching, deep, professional, and progressive. That's actually what this government needs, rather than the trial and the media.
Recently, in your Twitter handle, that is X handle, formerly known as Twitter, there's been these attacks on you because of the comments you made on the comments made by Professor Soyinka, where he called Nigerians, or angry Nigerians, where he called them barbarians. And some of you took offense to that comment, and that has generated a lot of hate on the X space. Now, now we are speaking about it, what do you have to say about that comment? Do you think he was wrong in calling Nigerians who are genuinely angry and wanting a better Nigerian, calling them barbarians? I mean, there's many who say that that has become unbecoming of a professor because a couple of times he have done so. And I do understand that also Woloshenka is also a man you have immense respect for.
Let me say very importantly that I still respect the Nobel laureate. But it comes to a point in the history of a nation and a people where that cliche, respect begets respect, comes to play. And I say this without equivocation, that over the past 24 months, the Nobel laureate, who has a right to keep the relationship he wants to keep, should also know that there's a place for politics. There's a place for progressive politics. And there is a place for personal relationship. We agree that he has a personal relationship with our president. That's good. That's his right. But when you allow personal relationship obviate your sense of patriotism, truth, and reason, it gives so many of us who are fans or who grew up loving and reading the works of Professor Wole Soyinka a real cause for worry. And so what I did on my X handle was to ask him and advise him that there's a time to keep quiet. And I'm saying that with the greatest sense of humility. There's a time, truly, Professor Wole Soyinka, to keep quiet. And this is the time to keep quiet, understanding that a generation of Nigerians are genuinely angry. Angry that a nation blessed by God with amazing resources and riches ineffable has not met their demands. Angry that a nation blessed by God with great wealth has not lived up to expectation. Angry that their generation was cared for and fettered by the Nigerian estate, whereas the generation of these young people have been left abandoned, unattended, and uncared for. So this generation is genuinely angry and they want a new deal, a new day, a new dispensation, and a new tendency in leadership. That was what we saw in the last election. But unfortunately, albeit consistently, Professor Wole Soyinka has tended to disparage and disrespect this generation of genuinely angry Nigerians. At some point, he called the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party a fascist. Mm-hmm. At another point, he has said that a movement that is absolutely, it was glaringly national, was a regional movement. And the young boys from Karunamuda, the young boys from Kafanchan, the young boys from Sokoto, and the young boys across this country, and young girls who rose up to support the obedient movement and the candidacy of Peter Obi, took on him. It was a major battle both on the social media and on the terrestrial news. I thought that Professor Wole Soyinka would have learned a few lessons. You don't stay in the way of a raging storm. The storm that we have today is not necessarily about Peter Gregory, but about a movement that wants a new day and a new deal and a new tendency in leadership. They did not stop there. They continued, albeit peacefully, to ask for that which is proper, right, and right. And rather than applaud them, Wole Soyinka wakes up from nowhere again to say that barbarians have taken over the social media. And I think that there's some kind of neurosis in this space. That neurosis, I do not know whether it's a function of age, but he has forgotten that when he was a lot younger, he himself went into a radio station armed with a shotgun to protest an election that was fraudulent. Today, he doesn't want young people to exercise and express their rights to disagree. And I think that's absolutely hypocritical. I think that that's absolutely pharisaical. And I think that anybody who truly loves the noble laureate should tell him that rather than insult and disparage these young people, he should applaud them because this country needs a new deal. And so what I did was an advice. But unfortunately, some people who are wont to seeing sound reason and sound logic from ethnic prisms, those who have immured their sense of truth and reason by ethnicity, those who think that once you speak against someone you love, you're speaking from ethnic cocoonery or tribal cocoons, came up, and interestingly, and I must say, their voice was far less than 10% on that tweet. I will continue to say to Professor Wole Soyinka, some of us respect you, would believe that you're one of the greatest writers to have come out of Africa, and we insist that if age is beginning to have its toll on you, you do us a great honor by speaking less and remaining the great monument that you are, the great example of protestation that you've been, and let the obedience be. Let Peter Gregory be. Let those who are insisting on a new day, a new republic, a new deal, and a new country be. Because ultimately, the right to disagree, the right to protest is an inalienable right congruent with democratic process, congruent with civil society, and congruent with the expectations of a highly progressive world.
Prof, let's look at the national security. We are here in Abuja, and it appears that the insecurity we see elsewhere in the Northeast, the Northwest, has landed in Abuja. Yesterday, while watching the TV, we saw the minister who incidentally is your brother and your friend, say that nowhere on earth you do not have insecurity. And many found that statement a little bit abhorrent. This is a man that many believe should be talking about how to secure Abuja. He is the, as some people say, the chief security officer of Abuja because he is the FCT minister and incidentally like the governor of Abuja, So, but the insecurity now, since you are in Abuja here, what's your take on the whole hula baloo regarding insecurity in Abuja?
First, let me say that, yes, I am from the Niger Delta, and so is Yesom Ezomo Wike. But he's not my brother. The man who's my brother is that man who lost his daughter to kidnappers. It was Norman Vincent Paul who said that the death of one man diminishes me because I'm involved in mankind. Therefore, do not ask of me for who the bell tolls. It tolls for you, for thee. I'm a part of the continent. I'm a part of humankind. When I hear people like Wike politic with everything, I wonder what happened to their humanity. I wonder what happened to their soul. I wonder what is about their essence. Because whether we like it or not, power is transient. But what is important to me as we discuss Abuja and the state of national security, it's that information, that red flag that the American embassy, through its service, gave in the month of September, October, that there is going to be a major security challenge in Abuja, and everybody, those who are in government, and then don't forget that then Wike was already a minister. Those who were in government didn't think or take it seriously. Today, it has come upon us. And rather than take responsibility, they look for who to blame. That's a sad trajectory. Rather than take responsibility, they're looking for where to put the blames, forgetting that the buck will always stop at the table of leadership. And so, as we address the fundamental issues of safety and security in our country, we must, and this is speaking to government, they must understand that the primary reason for which government exists is for the protection of lives and properties. As I talk to you in Njenje, um, places like Kubwa, Buari, Lugbe, places like Karu, Nyanya, Mararaba have been taken over by non-state actors who are in the business of kidnap for ransom. And this bothers me because I don't know whether you know that Nahiba, or whatever is her name, that was murdered by kidnappers, was supposed to have graduated, or her convocation was supposed to happen this week or so. Her father, her other siblings were kidnapped. From information that we've gotten from various sources, the family finally, after having lost his first daughter, the father, friends and relatives came up with about 100 million, and that was how they released the 4 remaining siblings who were still in captivity. Njenje, that bothers me because I bear the scars of insecurity in this country. I've lost a sister to kidnappers. It bothers me because the failure of security is largely the failure of government. You cannot look the other way in the face of this. And then you know what has become more cynical, impish, devious, and wicked is the fact that not only has the minister of the FCT sought for others to blame rather than the administration, we heard that one of his surrogates in Port Harcourt came up the same yesterday to say that the governor of River State, Fubara, is the one sponsoring insecurity, kidnap for ransom in Abuja. And that's how do I explain? How do I describe how soulless, how impish, and how wicked some of these political operators can be? I think that the time has come for Mr. President to give orders to the security agencies to ensure that the Federal Capital Territory is safe, to give instructions to the armed forces, the police, and all the security agencies to ensure that this country is safe. You cannot allow non-state actors to continue to harangue, harass, and hound the Nigerian people. It is unacceptable. There is no reason whatsoever, and there is no excuse whatsoever for this failure of state. So I think that those who are close to Nyesom Wike must tell him that there are certain actions and inactions of government that are not defensible. There are certain failures of government that are inexcusable, and there are certain steps that government must take if it truly believes that the primary reason for which we have leaders and governments is the protection of lives and properties. So I want to say without equivocation, and I say that again, that only those who believe in the greatness of our country and those who are working for the greatness of our country can be deemed actually to be my brothers. It doesn't matter their ethnicity, it doesn't matter their place in geography. What is important is that I'm a member of a human family. My tribe is a human tribe. And so I will vehemently refuse to be called Nyesom Wike's brother until he begins to do what is proper, right, and right.
Prof, recently we have seen the northern senators. Recently also we have seen Senator Aline Dume all saying one thing, that there is going to be consequences if CBN and FAM, that government have said they're going to move some part of it to Lagos, that if that happens, there is going to be consequences. Now, if I may ask you, what type of consequences do you think that northern leaders and northern senators will have on that? Why some will say this is actually part of restructuring that they are asking for. What's your take?
Let me say clearly that some of the actions of government gives me the glimmer of confidence and hope that something ultimately nice may just be in the horizon. I say this advisedly. For years, we have spoken, we have written, we have organized conferences and symposia on the need for a restructured Nigeria, on the need to make Nigeria workable, on the need to unbundle and dismantle this unwieldy superstructure. But unfortunately, some people masquerading to be genuine northern leaders have said no to it. Unfortunately, those who rode to power preaching about true fiscal federalism and resource control, no sooner had they gotten to power than they threw that programmatic off the window. But as you and I talk, I celebrate the present discourse on the political amphitheater, ditto the fact that some northern leaders are responding. Some are saying that the North is ready for restructuring. Some are threatening that if you send FAN to Lagos, and you ask yourself, where naturally should FAN be? If that's the Federal Aviation Authorities of Nigeria, or you ask yourself, where's the commercial headquarters of Nigeria? It's clearly Lagos. Should you, because of politics, centralize? We run a pseudo-federalism. We run a dysfunctional system. But I've told northern leaders in various fora that if they are true to the North, they will understand that the North is far richer than the South. And they will embrace the call for restructuring. That way, we will have a federalism that works. That way, we'll have a system and a government that is not only responsible, but responsive to the needs of the people. That way, we will have the return of the pyramids of granite, the sesame seeds, and the silos that otherwise made northern Nigeria extremely wealthy in maize and in grains. That way, we'll have the return of the pyramids of cocoa and the wealth that the Southwest got of cocoa. That way, we shall have a country that works, a country that is effective, a country that is rich, a country that essentially you have the states in healthy competition. But unfortunately, because those who should pretend our country are lazy, unfortunately, because they would rather dip their hands into a collective till rather than grow wealth, Nigeria has become largely a rent-taking and a rent-seeking nation. But you know, advertently or inadvertently, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration is making that discussion imperative. And that's what I salute. You know, Njenje, I'm one of the happiest persons in this country at this point, because it is clearly obvious that we will sit at the table of brotherhood sooner rather than later to discuss about the structure and the basis of our coexistence as a people. I want to see, and I say this with the greatest sense of commitment, I want to see a North that works. I want to see where my brother Musa is not an Amajari on the street, but is in school. I want to see where Amina is not a girl held somewhere to enforced into child marriage, but a girl who's doing well in a chosen field of hers. I want to see a country where people mine their resources. The gold that is the reason for banditry and terrorism in Zamfara, in Katsina, and in some part of the north is mined by the state through the local government and the private sector, and certain amount of that wealth sent to the federal government for the upkeep of the Nigerian armed forces, the foreign policy of government, rather than this corruptive superstructure that is very archaic, this corruptive superstructure that is very unwieldy, this corruptive superstructure that is unworkable and extremely dysfunctional. And I say this without fear of querulous critics. The federal government has no reason being involved in the Federal Government Girls College in my hometown of Ibuzo. The federal government has no reason being involved in the purchase of newspapers and laptops in the Federal Government College Janiki in Lagos. The federal government has no reason being involved in road construction in Abia State or Sokoto State. States should take control of their resources and be responsible for this. And I tell you, there is no state in this country that does not have mineral resources. And then interestingly, the greatest human resource is mankind, the human resource. The greatest resource anywhere in the world is human resource. What wealth does Singapore? Are you aware that Singapore has the most prized passport in the world? Do they have mineral resources? Come on, I think that the time has come for, and that's why I thank the Almighty God. Maybe perhaps He allowed us to have a Tinubu who will take certain decisions, albeit inadvertently, that will compel a national discourse along the lines of restructuring, along the lines of true fiscal federalism, along the lines of devolution of power. Because I'll give you a practical instance, Njenje. The only way to truly fight corruption is to allow for resource control and true fiscal federalism. And you ask me how? If you were from Delta State, and you know that the town of Uborikoko around the Saple Warrior axis has 60,000 barrels of crude oil. And your local government chairman through the state governor says, oh no, it is 30,000 barrels of crude oil. The local community will challenge it. That's how to fight corruption. That was what happened in the First Republic. When the corruption for which the First Republic was terminated was 10%ers. Remember Nzogu and co. 10%ers. Now you don't have 100%ers. They steal everything and tell you to go to hell. But you know what? The way to get responsible and responsive leaders is to ask the people of Zamfara to control their gold. And you find out that the governor will not bring Chinese to exploit their gold and tell them that there's nothing. You find out that a Jakarta steel mill would have been working by now. You find out that, are you aware that our cocoa is about the best in the world? But where are the cocoa fields and farms anymore? People have left them to pursue rent-seeking government. So what we need in this country is to come back to the table to discuss the terms of our collective existence. I think that the time has come for us to simply, and putting it simply, dust up the Republican Constitution of 1963. In place of the regions, place the states. The states should control 50%, should take 50% of their revenue, give 20% to the federal government, and put 30% in a common pool to help each other in terms of emergency, in terms of major acts of God or security breach. That's what this country needs to succeed. We need people who are visionaries. And I expect that Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who whilst he was the governor of Lagos State, championed the ideals of restructuring, rises up to the challenge. It is only through a restructured protocol, through a restructured Nigeria, can we have progress, greatness, and safety. We need state police, don't you think so?
Yes, we do.
We need men who understand their territory all over the world, even in Ghana here. You can't keep living in denial. You can't keep hiding behind one finger. A police headquarters in Abuja with the IGP in Abuja cannot effectively police and protect over 900,000 square kilometers. You can't do that. And then let me also say that this country is inclined to falsehood and self-denial and deceits. And what do I mean? I hear people call the governor of a state the chief security officer of the state. How can you be called the chief security officer when you cannot give instructions to the commissioner of police? Where does that happen? A governor can actually call the commissioner of police and he will drop the phone and say to him, sir, I do not take instructions from you. Except the IG asks me to do this, I will not do. And that's a provision of the law. So the time has come for us to revisit that law and ensure that we overhaul our dysfunctional superstructure, ensure that we torpedo and jettison this pseudo federal structure, which is absolutely unitary, and embrace true federalism. Only when we do so can this country grow, progress, and succeed.
So, in essence, in summary, what you're saying is that if the northern leaders continue in the trajectory of issuing this threat, it might get us to a point where finally everybody would agree to sit down and discuss about the future of Nigeria.
Absolutely so. And that's why I said, and I repeat without equivocation, that the actions, albeit inadvertent actions of the present government, will definitely lead us to that point where we'll sit down as a nation to discuss how we must unbundle this unwieldy and dysfunctional superstructure. I'm Professor Chris Mustafa Nwaokobia Jr. Keep watching Njenje Media.